What if you wrote a book, won an award for that book, but you didn't know because the website wasn't accessible? In this episode of the I Can't See You podcast, I'll tell you the story about my friend who had that happen to him.
From Studio B in Swarthmore, this is the I Can't See You podcast with David. It's like blind people for dummies.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 117 of the I Can't See You podcast. My name is David, at David Benj on all the socials. I really appreciate you joining me on what is a very soggy afternoon here in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania. And before I hit record, I took Ziggy out for a couple of minutes. And with me, it's always more than just a minute or two out to go to the bathroom. He likes to pick up some wood chips and eat whatever he can find. And so when I take him out, because I'm usually here all day with him, I allow him to play. And I have to be honest with you, I don't know if he noticed that it was raining or didn't care that it was raining, but he just went and grabbed a wood chip and plopped down and just laid out there to eat it and chew it. And we were out there probably for about 20 minutes. He was soaking wet and so saturated, it's not even funny. I was pretty wet also. I kept him on the leash today only to try and stop him from staying out there and getting all muddy. You know, we have our backyard is half grass, half mud. And I guess half wood chips. You do the math. It doesn't really work out, but that's what it is. So I was trying to keep him to the grassy areas where he plopped down so he wouldn't come in completely covered in mud. And I think I was successful in that. And that was the only thing I was successful today. And I kept asking him, I said, you know, it's raining, right? And, you know, I don't think he cared. So he enjoyed himself and he finally did pee so I could come back in and spend 20 minutes drying him off. So I only have one real topic today. And, you know I've touched on it a few times over the last few episodes and probably since I started the podcast. And, you know, there's a lot of things that are frustrating to folks who are blind and visually impaired. And one of them is accessibility of websites and apps and things like that. And, I heard one thing and read one thing this week that I just couldn't believe. And when I started to think about, you know, website accessibility and how easy it is to do, you don't have to send a crew of 4 out to with a jackhammer to knock out a sidewalk curb and put in a ramp. It's a few lines of code to make something accessible. There is nothing dramatic that has to be done. One guy could do it if you're fixing a website that's already built. And if you're building a website, it's something that can be done as you're building it. You know, I've touched on the emails that I get. And after hearing the CEO of the Miami Lighthouse on That Real Blind Tech show, and if you are blind or visually impaired or just have an interest, That Real Blind Tech show is with Brian and Ed. Brian is the commissioner of the All Blind Fantasy Football and Fantasy Hockey Leagues. So let's not talk about hockey because I'm in 8th place. I think I have it under control now. Let's see if I can climb out. And Ed is also in, I believe he's in both leagues. I know he did the football. And Ed works, I believe, for the Lighthouse up in New York, Lighthouse for the Blind. I know he lives in New York and works in New York, but I don't remember the office that, the organization he works for. But this person, and she was talking about website accessibility, and they will do a test on the website to make sure it's accessible to blind and visually impaired folks. And they had, I guess, during the presidential campaign, during the primary time, they went through all the different candidates' websites, and I don't remember if all of them or it was just most of them were not accessible. And again, you know, I know blind folks don't make up a huge voting block in this country. And again, that's another topic completely, whether they could even vote, you know, and I know that for me, if I didn't have Liz or the kids with me, you know, I don't know that I'd be able to vote. that's another topic for another day. But these websites, if you wanted to find something out about one of the candidates, you couldn't because it wasn't fully accessible or accessible at all. And I just don't get that. And she went on to say a couple of things that really made me start thinking. And it's not just having to do with websites, but why is it okay that a whole group of people can't do something, and it's okay that you don't have to make it so that group can go on a website or participate in school, geometry class because they're blind, or bank during the pandemic and only drive-throughs were open. I don't know if you remember, I talked about it, where if only a drive-through was open and a blind person lived by themselves, how are they going to go bank? You can't walk up to those. You're not allowed. I I found that out back when I was in college down in Miami when my friend Pat and I walked up and the girl said, you need to have wheels. And we said, what about roller skates? Yeah, that would be okay. But, a bike would be preferable, or a car. And we understood. And so from then on, we drove up in a car. Pat may have gone on his bike, but at some point. But so during the pandemic, if you were blind and your bank only had their drive-through open, how do you make a deposit? You certainly don't want to call an Uber. You don't want to be in with somebody that you don't know. Again, I live with Liz, and, we could do that stuff. But if you lived alone, or if you're blind and you live alone, you couldn't bank. How do you bank? And it's okay. It was okay to exclude blind folks. I bet it wouldn't be okay if you excluded some other type of folk, whether you exclude white people or black people or Jewish people or Catholic people or Muslim people. All hell would break loose. So why is it okay that you can exclude blind folks from being able to go to a website, and it's okay if it's not accessible. It's okay if they can't understand what's on the page. And I just don't get it. I don't get it, and I don't understand why there is not more folks talking about it. And again, the NFB agenda for Washington seminar this year, one of the topics was app and website accessibility. And it is just so frustrating that there are times when you go to a website, and it happens more for me, it happens more in an app than a website, because with a website, for me at least, and again, because I have a little bit of sight, I can kind of figure out what's happening. But I'll tell you something in a minute that I couldn't figure out on a website that has to do with the other thing that made me wonder about everything with accessibility this week. So why is it okay that you say, okay, there's roughly 7 million folks in the U.S. that are blind or visually impaired to the point where their vision can't be corrected to a point where they don't need some sort of, not just glasses, but some sort of device to help them read or see or whatever it is. So they're not legally blind. I don't know that covers anything below legally blind. And again, there are some people who are out there that, let's say their vision is 20 over 100 or 20 over 120 that may have some issues. I know that when my vision started dropping, and the best mine ever was, as I mentioned before, I was 20/60 plus, meaning I could read a letter or two on the, maybe it was 20, it's either 20/60 plus or 20/50 minus. I was able to read a letter or two on the 20/50 line for a few years when I was late teen, early 20. I was able, and only for a few years, and then things started to go bad, and I have glaucoma, so my pressure started to go up, and my vision started to deteriorate. And then in 2003, I had a surgery that took me from 20/70 or 20/80 to 2100 or a little worse, and and then when I had my 2008, when I had some surgery, that pretty much took me to, Legally Blind. But again, my entire life I've been visually impaired. So I don't know where that cutoff is. I know that there are a lot more folks who have some sort of vision issue in the U.S., more than that 7 million. But I don't know if the 7 million counts legally blind and totally blind, or something that is a little more less significant than legally blind, but not just, hey, get a pair of glasses and you can do just about everything. So we use that 7 million number. So you're excluding, and that's just adults, by the way, 16 and over. So 7 million people, a little over 2%, 2.5% of the U.S. population. You're saying you can't do this, and it's okay that we exclude you from doing this, whether it's participate, like I said, in school, read a website to figure something out, use an app. And why, when the Americans with Disabilities Act came out 30 years ago, that was supposed to help everybody with disabilities. But blindness has always been in a separate category. And as I mentioned a few episodes ago, for one reason, if you have, let's say, a paraplegic, there's not too much other than making, the doorway wide enough for the wheelchair, or the bathroom big enough for a wheelchair, or a desk to accommodate the wheelchair. You don't have to get a special computer. You don't have to get special software. You don't need any of that to accommodate them. So if you hire them, you just have to make sure the building you're in works, or the desk that they're going to use works. If you're blind, you don't need a wide doorway, but you need software for your computer. If it's Microsoft, that is roughly $1,000. There may be other equipment if you need to have someone go out and take notes somewhere outside of the office. And as I mentioned before, for students, there's these braille note takers that they cost like $5,000 or $6,000, compared to, as I mentioned, during that episode, a few episodes back, compared to a pen and, a legal pad or some sort of notebook or sheet of paper for a sighted person. Or for that matter, a paraplegic. Now, obviously, a quadriplegic, it's another story, and you obviously need more things there. So, why is it okay? And I don't know the answer. So maybe you do, and if you do, I'd like to hear the answer. Is it's just too hard, and there's not enough people that it would benefit? Again, I don't know what the percentage of Jews in the U.S. is, but it's probably in that same ballpark, a couple percent. When I went to school, we got the Jewish holidays off some of the years we didn't. And to be honest, I liked it better when my friends had to go to school and it was a Jewish holiday and I had off, because I felt like I was getting one over on them, and they were in school while I was, doing something else after we celebrated the holiday or participated in the holiday stuff. So, you can't say bad things about Jews or stop Jews from doing certain things. So why is it okay that you can, we can't make these accommodations for everybody, so only the blind folks are the ones who are affected, so it's okay. And it's not okay, because it is, especially for a kid in school, high school or college, how are they going to compete? How are they going to earn a living if they can't even get the materials they need? My friend Harriet, who's president of the Keystone chapter of the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania, she has been fighting, and I don't know what the status is now. She's a school teacher. She's been fighting with the school district of Philadelphia to get the materials in Braille. And I know last year last school year, her family members were reading the materials to her, and she was entering them in the device so she could then print them out in Braille. So again, her own time, her own, materials, that she had to then pay for, obviously, to create. So, how is that right? And that's an employer. I just don't get it. So, and to just show you how funny, in a sad sort of way, my friend Max Ivy posted in his Facebook group the other day called "What's Your Excuse?" That's the name of his podcast and the group, not what he posted. He had posted he won an award, and he won a 2021 Author Shout Reader Ready Award, and he won one, but he didn't know it. He didn't know it because, and I went to the page to verify this to see if I could see it or not. The site wasn't accessible because, like so many emails that I've been complaining about over the years, the website when you go and it shows, the winners, everything was a graphic. Every book cover was a graphic. And Max's book, by the way, is The Blind Blogger's First Speaking and Signing Adventure, How to Conquer Your Fears. And you can get that at Amazon. It's available on Kindle and in regular book form. I'll put a link in the show notes for it, and it will be an affiliate link. So if you buy it, I appreciate it. Please make some other purchases while you're there at Amazon. So Max wrote this book. He's won a couple of awards for it, including this 2021 Author Shout Reader Ready Award. And you can go to authorshout.com and see it right over there. See the page at least, and I'll put that link in the show notes as well. And again, show notes, ican'tseeyou.com/117. Remember, I can't see you, ICANTCU.com. It's 7 letters, but it sounds like a whole sentence. ican'tseeyou.com/117. And so when he knew the awards were announced, he tried to go to the page, couldn't see it. So he had a friend, go through it, and they saw it there. So, it's not like he wrote a book about, anything else, but it's about not, he's the blind blogger. It's about blindness and doing something that, I guess a lot of sighted folks don't think blind folks can do, which is going out on the road on his own and speaking and, doing book signings for his book. His previous book, obviously not this one, because he wrote about it during the adventure. So I just thought that was funny. And after hearing the person from the Lighthouse Miami Lighthouse talk about it, and, how, some of the stuff that her organization does to make sites accessible. And she didn't go over pricing, and I'm kind of curious. I may have her on at some point to talk about that. I know I've mentioned some other guests that I want to have on, and one of them is a designer that I connected with on Instagram that designs accessible websites and user interfaces. It's just mind-boggling to me that we can't do that. And, there are, as I've mentioned before, a lot of things that we can do, but we can do it a different way than a sighted person can. And it's just, it just takes longer sometimes. There are some things that we can do with the help of technology. Whether it's, read something or, find out what something, looks like, because it's described. Technology is great when it works for us. But when it's, when you have this tool and it's not being used, for example, alternative text, the alt tags in images, I went somewhere the other day and I'm trying to think of where it was. I went to an app and it just said the title of the picture. Meaning, and when I say the title, meaning, 1Z754197654.jpg. Well, I don't know what that is. So, that's frustrating when, again, you can, as you're building the website and you're bringing everything together, you can fix that. Certainly once it's done, you can still go back and fix it. Up until a little while ago, you used to, with Facebook, when you posted a picture, you used to have to post the picture and then you could go back in and edit the alt text. You couldn't do it before. They fixed that. So now you can, before you post it, you can put the alt text up. Instagram, from the time I've used it, always had where you can put the alt text, from what I remember at least. I haven't been on Instagram that long, so... So, it's just mind-boggling. And I was so mad after I listened to that Real Blind Tech show and the CEO from Miami Lighthouse was talking about all these things. And I started thinking, people get so bent out of shape so quickly anymore about just about anything. If a group is being targeted for something or accused of something, there's all this outrage, but there's no outrage that if I wanted to order something on a certain website or a certain app, that it wouldn't work for me because it's not accessible. There's no outrage. There's no outrage when a blind kid wants to go to school and one of the courses that's required for him or her to graduate is geometry, but how do they do geometry if they can't see? Well, there are books that you can get and there are things that you can do so they can feel the different things. I had Simon on a while back and he talked about that, and that was going to be a challenge for him, but they fixed it. They came through. And it's hard enough not being able to see or see very well to then have to fight to, look, if you need to take geometry and some other things that are maybe not as descriptive as, literature or English or whatever, you have to make an accommodation, or that blind kid is never going to be able to do or understand the stuff that, that has to be done to be an engineer or to be a whatever. So I don't know why it made me so angry, not more so than when something doesn't work for me. And I just thought, okay, when I was struggling to think about what I was going to talk about. And then over the weekend, I heard the podcast, that Real Blind Tech show. And again, I'll link that in the show notes. And, and then a day or two ago, Max had posted about winning the award. And he said, but I didn't know, a friend had to tell me. He said, because the page wasn't accessible to me. And it's funny, when I went to the page and I hovered over each award, I thought, well, maybe it's got the alt text there. And like I said, I don't use the screen reader on my computer. I zoom in, and the only thing it said was, 2021 Author Shout Reader Ready Award winner. And each one, every time I went from one to the next, it just said the same thing. So please, if you can fix any of this, I'd love to hear your solutions. 646-926-6350. You have up to 3 minutes to leave your message and comments and questions, reviews, and please let me know in that message if it's okay to use your recorded voice on an upcoming episode. I'd appreciate that. You can also reach out via email, ican'tseeyouPodcast@gmail.com. Remember, I can't see you 7 characters or 7 letters, whichever you prefer, but it sounds like a whole sentence. ican'tseeyouPodcast@gmail.com. And you can also connect with me on socials. @DavidBenge is where you can find me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and Clubhouse and LinkedIn. LinkedIn, it's, linkedin.com/in/DavidBenge. I also will be having some stuff on kit.co, which once it's up there, I'll let everyone know. Some people have asked me about what I use to record the podcast, so I will put everything together and put it up there. So that's easy to find. But I do appreciate you listening to episode 117 of the I Can't See You podcast. Remember, please let me know if you have any questions, 646-926-6350. I'd appreciate that. I'd love to hear from you and get your comments. And again, continue to stay safe, be well. Hope you got your shot. If you haven't, good luck with that. And I will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the I Can't See You podcast with David. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. And don't forget to share the podcast with your friends.